Hi, and welcome to this Atos LinkedIn Live. Today, it's already part 2 of Demystifying Digital Twins. Yes, we did get some great feedback from the first session, some great questions, and people encouraged us to go on more than just like one time about a digital twin. But, well, yeah, talking about digital twins, there were questions, would it make sense for different companies? What about digital twins? And we even got like the funny ones, like it's like, why don't you have a digital twin? So I welcome you today, Friso, the digital twin of myself. And I try to do this like it is in the image right now. Now, today, again, I'm not talking about to myself because we have so many knowledgeable person and we want to reflect a little bit on the events that were taking place, like WindEurope, what the customers said and what their questions were, because we thought, well, that might be interesting for so many more. So I'm absolutely happy that I'm joined by the absolute experts of digital twins. And first of all, I would like to introduce Muli Mohan Srinivas. I always try to really concentrate putting the name right. I'm always doing it wrong. So sorry for that, Muli.
Don't bother.
Great to have you here with us today. Global Head, CV Industry 4.0 and Digital Twin. And I would say within Atos, I heard and I learned you are like Mr. Digital Twin. And I'm waiting until your digital twin shows up afterwards. Muli, great
if
you
I'm
are
as
here.
good as you.
Well, no, you are absolutely. But you're also joined by some great colleagues. And I would like to bring up the second one. We already had him in the first Demystifying Digital Twin. It's Sandeep Ban, Global Senior Expert for Digital Twin. Hi, Sandeep. Great you joined us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me again.
It's an absolute pleasure. We learned so much. We got good feedback. I'm looking forward to today's session. And we're going to have a panel. So it's very, very interesting and excited. Bringing up the next one, who is Jens Tom Aramnakudi, Global Solution Manager. And I also apologize for getting your name wrong. Right. But it's great to have you here, Jens. That's easy. I'm used to call you Jens by the first name. And last but not least, and that should be easy because it's somehow a German name, it's Helmut Ommetsberger, Director, Head of Atos Worldgrid North America. Hi, Helmut.
Grüß Gott aus Houston.
Yes, so I was totally right with my name. That's absolutely perfect. We heard so much about digital twin, and I think going back on the WindEurope, what happened there, your experience with the customer, I think that's quite interesting to share. So the only experience, but also what customers were thinking, where they are in their journey to a digital twin, what their first steps is. So I would like to open this up to you. So Sandeep, what were your thoughts about WindEurope and how did it all work out?
I think in our first part, we discussed about digital twin. We discussed the definition of digital twin by Atos. And what digital twin means for Atos, like how we get 3 threads together, data threads together, especially IoT data and the data which is coming from the enterprise world and the semantic data. Now we had an opportunity. My colleague had an opportunity to demo this digital twin in WindWorld, in WindEurope, especially in Bilbao in Spain last month. And probably, Jens, you can tell us, you can give us your experience or what you based on your interaction with the customers. And we can have some sort of a debate if you have any questions which were unanswered over there. So we being here, Murli and myself, can go through those with you.
No problem. No, thank you, Sandeep. Thanks for the introduction. And yes, I had the opportunity to go to Bilbao to be part of the wind energy industry, which we've been supporting for 15 plus years from Atos. It was a very exciting event, especially since it was post-COVID and everyone was in high spirits, meeting each other, not shaking hands sometimes, but yeah, almost like that. So we had everyone from small and big players, asset owners, OEMs, so equipment manufacturers, technology expert, financiers, researchers, everyone who's interested in wind industry joining us. And I can, from what I've learned, what I've heard, I can clearly say that wind is blowing in the right direction as far as this industry is concerned. So, and it's quite fair to say that in this kind of global mix of issues and energy security and pandemic, there was a very clear message saying that wind energy would be part of this this energy mix we need to adopt to moving forward, especially in terms of net zero commitments and decarbonization and stuff. And what's kind of more exciting for us, for me and Atos, and the conversations we've had, is the fact that everyone across the board said adopting digital is the way forward. So that's from design, planning, installation, operations, and maintenance. It was very clear that digitalization was going to disrupt the way wind energy industry is working today, and to kind of move them positively to to address their bigger, better challenges going forward. So what I mean, I don't just mean the operations and maintenance side. Everything from environmental, marine conservation to people safety. It was all about digital. It was how do we utilize digital and digital technologies to address those going challenges. So it was one key point which I came across very often was attracting talents and knowledge retention. So for me, I come from a very traditional industry before this, and that was absolutely a key issue. I didn't expect it to be that prominent within the wind energy industry as well, but so it is. And there was a lot of open discussions on how do we attract the best talents, but how do we maintain, keep them within the industry and retain those knowledge and using digital for that. The other big question was definitely around the next technological advancements around floating wind farms. There's more dynamics involved in that, and how do we use solutions like digital twin to be able to better maintain those kind of assets where there is more more challenges around people safety, cost and such. I'm going to come back one step to that knowledge side of it, and as all of you know, one of the key aspects we talked about was the semantic knowledge capture, and how digital twin solutions can help with those in that area. So apart from the kind of OT field information, digital threads, the enterprise data, but the semantic knowledge bit, it was very exciting for a lot of people to hear. And as much as I could explain, but there was quite technical questions around how it happens, and what kind of business benefits we can bring by linking that semantic thread across. So maybe Sandeep, Murali, if you could comment on that. It's really showing some kind of real examples of how semantic data can be turned into insights, and what kind of technologies we use for those.
Absolutely. Right. Thanks, Jens. Let me this semantic knowledge, as we said, that there are 3 data threads, and this semantic knowledge is very important, and I can claim that this I think this has been implemented for the first time in 2019 2020 when we started this project, and where we try to capture the knowledge of people, basically not only the knowledge which is in the heads of people, but also the knowledge which is written in the form of text, in the form of image, in the form of sound. So that was a challenging aspect. For example, if somebody climbs up the turbine 5 or 6 times a day, and he wants to now try to rectify certain faults within the turbine, so how to capture that knowledge, because we have seen in this industries aging population or aging knowledge is, because of the aging population, we are losing a lot of knowledge. New people, it takes them time to get to that particular speed. And we came up with a concept, we came up with an app, we call it as a maintenance friend, where you can speak to it, and when you are rectifying the fault, you can speak to it, and this particular app can change your language from it is a natural language processing. You can speak in your own language, it could be your mother tongue, and it should convert it into English language, and it goes into an RDF database. So we have this engine, cognitive engine behind it, where we do have this graphical database. And idea is it uses Spark, QL, and queries and OWL, which is the technologies behind it. But idea is to next time when somebody comes in who's not aware about the new, not aware about the bug or the error in the turbine, he can query in, put certain error codes, and he can get the best way to optimize this particular, best way to rectify this particular problem. So it could be in the form of he can get a video, he can even take the video and upload it. And next time we can get, okay, the mean time to repair for this particular problem last time was 5 hours, or maybe in future it could be 4 hours also if you optimize it in a better way. So it's content driven. We acknowledge this. It has to be used. So more people use it, more and more you can get intelligence out of this app. So it's very, very important to have uh, motivate people, especially the field engineers who are not who don't know how to use the in certain areas. It's very difficult for them to for us to convince those field engineers to use it. So it's mostly content driven app where we are also trying to encourage field engineers, making a little bit of gamification within the app, encouraging them. They are getting certain points, they are getting motivated to use it, so that we can capture this knowledge. This is not only applicable to wind turbine industry. We are looking at it in all type of industries, especially in automotive industry, where there's a big gap between the aging knowledge and the new entrants who are coming into this industry. So that's the way we have addressed this particular thing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Modi, you want to add something?
Yeah. Let me come, because I think our colleague Helmut seems to have had a great time at Atlantic City with an event which obviously is just picking up in North America, as I understand, an offshore wind event, IPF, at the Atlantic City. And I hate to say this, Helmut, that Europe is probably decades ahead of US as far as wind turbines and maturity of this whole solution is concerned. How did the audience there and the customers there receive this? Because they are just starting and they can actually leapfrog into the next generation using what Europe has done.
So Molly, that's a great question. I would sum up IPF Wind Atlantic City as the highway to 30 gigawatt. So the Biden administration has set a goal of 30 gigawatt offshore power generation by 2030, which isn't too far away. And we all know 4 to 8 years from initial lease sale to initial operation is the time span we're looking for. The overall environment in the US is complex. Like in the early days in Europe, stakeholder buy-in, the state of the transmission infrastructure and the upgrades required, and planning a mesh network to minimize congestion at the integration points is a topic. Supply chain, the workforce, and then of course the complex regulatory framework here in the US, where you have to balance federal, state, and local regulations. We had some really great conversation with a wide spectrum of participants, construction, port operators, competitors to Atos when it comes to mission critical communications and digital twinning. But zooming back from all the conversations we had with participants, the two themes we came to Atlantic City to discuss with current and future customers, mission critical communications and digital twinning, they really resonated. Look, I think that IPF Wind 2022 was really about ensuring that the US is set up for a sustainable offshore wind future that supports local communities, creates good paying jobs, that create security, economic and social security, and that minimize the impact on the environment. Right. All of that, of course, we can leverage the significant amount of experience that Europe already has. To put things into context, we currently have 42 megawatt of offshore energy generation in the US, which is obviously dwarfed by what Europe has to offer. We have 7 turbines operating right now. They're pilot projects that are allowing people to learn how to do this and how to do it well, compared to the 5,700 plus turbines that are currently operating in Europe. So my question to you all is, if you look back over your engagement with European operators, what are the top 3 critical success factors that you believe will allow us here in the US as an industry to successfully design, develop, and deploy digital twinning supported operations and maintenance campaigns?
Right. That's something which we have heard too often. Me and Sandeep have been at least talking to close to around 100 customers across industries, and especially in the wind industry, the role of digital twin becomes that much more important, and especially when we're talking about offshore wind turbines, because the single most pain which the industry faces is the maintenance and operation cost, because they are somewhere in the middle of the ocean. It's not that easy to keep going back and forth, unlike a land-based turbine. And they wanted a certain visibility in the future about predictions. They want a certain remote maintenance. They want a certain, let's call it, performance output projections, so that they are able to fulfill their obligations towards the people, towards the grid operators, and so on. So all these things, so digital twin actually brings all the recipes of digital threads together to be able to fulfill these KPIs. And there, I think, of course, not to forget the communication part, right? Because we're talking about remote communication and secure communication. So the one of the most important thing, the operation cost, the availability of the turbine, and the overall performance of a wind farm with respect to the output is something which will resonate across the world, whether it is North America, Europe, and so on. And I was just wondering, is that the sense you got when you presented a land-based demo to these people, Jins, in Bilbao? Was it resonating? Because we are talking about in Germany or Europe, we are talking about integrating green hydrogen and so on as part of this whole digital twin. That means we're talking about the twins of twins, a digital twin of a wind turbine integrated with a digital twin of a green hydrogen plant. So did that resonate with those the audience which you actually addressed?
Absolutely did, because I think so. I can just briefly explain, mention one of the conversations we had. So you've got between the UK and various mainland European countries, we've got subsea interconnections, for example. It's owned and operated by National Grid and such, and there were a lot of conversations related to how can these subsea interconnections be utilized to help the make them of multi-use, so allow offshore wind to directly connect to these subsea grids, and at the same time, like you said, can we actually generate hydrogen in the middle of the sea in a platform and use that for green transportation, send it back to industry complexes near to various countries and when there is intense industrialization and requires hydrogen, when we were discussing all of this, so the main kind of topic there is how does all these assets link together? How do they communicate to each other? How can you share that data, but also insights about what's available, what's not available,
right.
What's the optimum way of operation? And somehow we ended up all those conversations, like you said, about twins of twins. I wasn't by any way proposing everyone should have a digital twin of their asset. I was just saying that the interfaces needs to be there so that you get a holistic view of not just your own asset but your stakeholders, everyone you're connected to, and a good way is to make sure you're digitally connected that way.
So I would Sandeep, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I would like to add one more point. In offshore wind turbine, we are still learning. It's in the learning phase. There are 3 Ws which are very important in offshore turbine. We call it as wind, wave, and water.
Okay.
So these are 3 Ws which we can never predict accurately. Prediction of these 3 Ws is very important. How the water will behave, being a salty water, how the waves will behave, how the wind is going to behave. Now, very important thing is how I think I'm answering Helmut's, just adding what Murli said. We need to have some sort of an during the design process. We need to have some sort of an uh, we need to construct a design around using some sort of an numeric or physical design of its, keeping into consideration what is the wind, what is the velocity of the wind direction and all. Once we construct this so that the displacement is less, so once we now how digital twin will play a role here, once we design this particular thing, so using our physics models, and then put this model as a reduced order model on the turbine so that we can get the realistic data. This has not been done as of now. We can get the realistic data of wind. We can get the realistic data of this so that this model, we start seeing how this model will behave.
So a bit of edge computing as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm sure this has been already, the design has been done in the lab environment, keeping into consider the extreme conditions. But once we bring this model into the real environment, especially giving real-time data, this is the feedback loop of the digital twin. Correct. And then when we have this model out of this, when I can confidently say we will save at least 20 to 30% of the steel which is used in these offshore turbines. There are 6,000 tons of steel, 7,000 tons of steel, huge carbon. If you talk about carbon emission, they are in itself big carbon emitters. So how can we reduce the material? That's also one of the challenges in this particular industry. So and how can we then predict this thing? So physics model along with the artificial intelligence is a very important thing to get this particular turbine where we can get all these optimize these parameters.
Sandeep, if I may ask a quick follow-on question, one of the topics that was raised by a number of visitors to our booth in Atlantic City was, what about the foundation? What about monitoring the foundation? There is a significant concern about the health, the long-term health of offshore foundations. Can we talk a little bit about that and talk about how our digital twin solution could be extended to address those concerns?
So maybe I can take that one, right? I mean, I think we did something with one of the largest, let's call it simulation company, physics simulation, and Sandeep actually mentioned the 3 Ws, which is absolutely appropriate. Mm-hmm. Basically, there could be fractures, there could be deterioration in the structure in the towers, there could be any kind of thing which is depending on the salinity of the water, depending on the wind velocity, wind turbulence, and so on and so forth. So there are 2 things, right? Sandeep talked about the physics-based model, which is actually giving you a static information about what are the possibilities where failure can happen. But then introducing sensors appropriately on the tower and on the blades and providing the real-time feedback to play that model with the physics model is basically the answer, because not everything can be predicted when you do a physics-based model. So you need real-time feedback so that you can play that. And this data, and Sandeep, I think, talked about it earlier, this also includes visual data. That means we use long distance UAVs or drones to capture the physical pictures and videos of it, which can be analyzed using AI machine learning to play this model within the digital twin, with the digital twin meta model of which is a physics-based model. And then you can simulate under what conditions would they fail. So that's something which definitely is on our cards that we wanted to go ahead with. But I think, as Sandeep said, we are still learning a lot, because Mother Nature is not exactly the same everywhere. So we actually are learning as part of this process. Sandeep, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think 60% of turbine failures in offshore is because of the power drain, or because of the rusting, corrosion, and other things, because of the nature of the sea also. I think we have to use UAV where we can. Every time people cannot go up the turbine and find out, where the corrosion is or where the problems are. So we need to have some sort of a technology. I'm sure people are using it, but we are still learning out of it, how to use those images and how to derive this information from the images, especially how to detect the corrosion and how to detect the fatigue within that particular turbine.
So we have
So
achieved. We
this-
had tried to achieve it to some extent for the wind blades analysis, but then this can be extrapolated and done for the towers too, and especially
Yes.
on offshore turbines.
I just want to add another complexity to all of this. So there is a lot of discussions around floating wind
Yes,
turbines
yes.
as well. So that's a whole different dynamics, as I mentioned earlier, about hydrodynamics, aerodynamics, and all of that interacts with the generation capability, your output, and then even operations and maintenance activities is not as simple, as same as for a fixed bed turbine. So there's a lot of areas we need to we can support, I think.
For example, mooring
digital.
is very important of
guys, just one thing. Basically, I just saw an online question you want to take. I think
That's
Fizo,
right. But your communication was so ongoing, and sorry to just like take it over all to you. It was so interesting. But like all the data and all the masses and the twins of the twins and all that, is it like with all that it's based on data and the 3Ws? The more data means more consuming more power, consuming more devices and all that. How does it come in then after we spoke about decarbonization? And I'm sorry, Helmut and James, for going over the image. It was quite a huge question.
Right.
What is the
It's a
answer
great
on that?
question.
It's like, right?
I think
Helmut,
it's
Moni.
yeah. I
You
think
want
it's
to
a
take that,
trade-off,
Moni?
right? It's a trade-off. We are doing a lot of we are doing a lot of let's call it analysis. We are trying to use a lot of machine power. Obviously, this is going to cost a lot of energy, and which is not in the same direction as that we want to go as far as sustainability is concerned. But the trade-off is that if we are able to offset that, and we are capable of actually putting a carbon footprint on the renewable energy generation versus what we actually do to make sure that our renewable energy generation sources are secure and running and offsetting the analysis or the hardware carbon emissions as far as analysis is concerned. I think we definitely see at least 50 to 70%, let's call it positive direction as far as carbon offsetting is concerned when it comes to renewable energy generation. But obviously this can be different for some other areas, but renewable, we can confidently say we are on the positive as far as net zero is concerned. And I mean, Sandeep, you want to add something on
For example, I will give you just an example. When we did this project, we were able to save maybe probably we increased the availability of asset by 2%. For example, now if I convert it into carbon, how much carbon it's saved? It's huge carbon saving. 2% of asset for 1 gigawatt of asset, it's a huge carbon saving. But how much carbon I have consumed? Probably it could be delta, 20% of that. So if we talk about net carbon, because in the world is talking about net carbon, not carbon zero. Right. It is never possible. We're talking always about net carbon zero. So it is always, we are saving more carbon than we are emitting the carbon. So it's net carbon.
And if I may add quickly, just so what we're talking about here, I think Adarsh's question was about computing powers and stuff like that. So ideally, you guys already mentioned about edge computing and potentially using cloud platforms and a mix of all of that. So there are lots of green options there as well. So it's about picking the right technologies. Where do you need the computing power against to utilize a full stack of computer? So that it's not just a technology.
By the way, I think we have a great focus around green data centers and green computing power as far as, because we try to reduce that to a large extent so that we don't have to offset, or we don't have to take the trouble of offsetting it too much on the other side. So we are also aware of reducing our carbon footprint as far as compute is concerned.
Plus, there are various elements, whether we need to, for example, for CNC, we are getting 400 every 400 milliseconds we receive data. So whether we need to take all this data to the cloud, which will emit of carbon. So it's up to us that how we do start edge computing, how we reduce the data at that point. So it's also involved in, how technology is evolving around it. using edge computing and other things, what Jins said.
So
it's also being strategic about what exactly you digital twin. Coming from an oilfield services background, of course, you'd like to digital twin everything around the wellhead, all the way from drilling to production. But when you once you get really strategic about the particular components that require digital twinning to up the overall reliability, to up the overall asset utilization, to reduce all the waste that goes into maintenance. I think what you will find is that you can achieve some really exciting net zero goals.
Yes,
absolutely.
Think so too. That's awesome. Thank you for taking the question. I think it was important because thinking of like all that data and compute power, of course, it's like, is it going up or helping down? Yeah, interesting aspect. And thank you for the great question. It's like, I need to look a little bit on the time. Normally, we always planning to go for a 30-minute session of digital twin. It's so hard. We already need to plan for session 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Because I would say like, okay, let's go on. But of course, if you still have a question out there, dear participants, feel free to drop them into the chat. If we can take them live, fine. Afterwards, we can also answer them in the chat. But Muli, I would like to just like get on that. So we learned so much. What were like the key takeaways? What were like the things we said, just like, oh, let's focus on that. What would be of interest for you?
I think the interest for us is, I think we ask our customers and we ask the audience basically to also not look at digital twin as a technological, from the technological angle, look at it from a business perspective. Do what is barely essential to get your KPIs done. Only by doing that, and that's an experience Sandeep and I have done with several customers. Only by doing that, the customer can justify the business case that he will invest into digital twin. It's an incremental process. You will never reach a digital twin in one shot. It is always a journey that you need to embark upon.
Perfect. Thank you. Helmut, it's just like now your learnings also from the North American market and perspectives, like how to put that in action. I think that's also something which is quite important to know and reflect on a little bit.
Well, I think that the challenge for the North American market is somewhat unique, right? So we have to scale up and come up to speed very, very aggressively. You see a lot of wind farm construction, supply chain related port developments going up. You see construction scaling up. You see grid infrastructure modernization scaling up. And this will require some highly focused strategic digital twinning in not just the operation and maintenance of the wind farms components themselves, but also the grid. So what I'm expecting here in the next 24 months in the US is that we will, as an industry, focus on what I'm going to call baselining science. You know, collecting that critical semantic data that we had about from Morley and Sandeep, to create the models that make sense for us, to begin feeding into the models the information that will be critical to be successful in the northeast sector of the US. And then we're going to have to redo the whole thing again for the West Coast, because northeast sector is going to be largely single foundation wind farms, whereas on the West Coast, because of the rapidly dropping sea levels, we'll have to switch to floating wind farms, which of course have entirely different requirements. And then last but not least, I think the concept of an offshore energy hub, as is being discussed in Europe, where we're thinking about building islands that combine energy collection, storage, and interjection into the subsea cables with hydrogen plants that then support a whole ecosystem of hydrogen-driven boats, maintenance, etc. A lot to do, and about 5 or 6 use cases, very focused strategic use cases for digital twinning that we look forward to exploring with our partners.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. But you know, like whenever you tell something about like a time frame, so 24 months, we're going to do a LinkedIn Live reviewing like how the market has changed and if your way of thinking forward is now looking where we're standing at. I think that's quite an interesting to see how it changes what we've learned. You said we need to learn about still about like wind turbines and all that. So I would be happy to have you in 24 months time from now and look a little bit like that and see how that all achieved. If that's fine for you, Helmut, here's the invite for this.
Absolutely. I'd love to be here, and thank you for having me.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And as we're looking down, thank you, Helmut. As the end of the hour, Jins, what about like your view on that and your key takeaway of this session, but also from the learnings from the fairs, the WindEurope, the IPF?
I think I've shared most of it, but really, the part that we talk about technologies, digitals, but what Murli mentioned about business outcome. I think that's key to defining what your digital twin is. I usually talk about digital twin and the aspect of a design process and a service twin. That's my three twins in my head. It doesn't have to relate to industry standards, but how do we help in the very early stages of a project? So a planning session. You need to be able to communicate, collaborate, bring the best design together, make sure you're making all the right decisions so that in the future you do not have many rework or so that design you bring together in your design twin kind of a stage, you need to give it life, virtual life, and that's your process twin for you. And that virtual plant you've built, like you did before, your twin, will need to come to life. So all the commissioning work, installation, and the very complex infrastructure project this industry, especially offshore wind industry, have in hand, will need that help, that concise, very precise work done at the early stages to be able to implement those programs well. So when you link these three, it allows you, or gives you the platform to be able to operate and maintain these assets long term. I mean, you're not just talking about 40 years, about future through life management, extending the life of these assets and reducing burden in terms of operation maintenance and doing it more intelligently. So that's my take about everything I've seen. So I can link how digital twin helps in these three stages, and across those phases, wherever a specific project is, we should be able to explain and utilize these kind of platforms to be able to make a business outcome out of it. So that's my take on it. It's not very technical. I agree, but that's the simplest way I kind of look at it.
It's a good explanation. It's good. Thank you. Thank you so much, James, for your view on that. See you in the next Demystifying Digital Twin. Sandeep, your point of view for closing before we close.
Well, I can see two things, particularly I have 2 points. One is how we can bring value across the value chain of an industry. When I say value chain of an industry, for example, is the manufacturing industry. It contains design, innovation, production, and then aftermarket. But as of now, because of internal organization, people, processes, and other things within the organization, if you put digital twin across this entire value chain, then you will find the benefit. For example, if I get certain things from the aftermarket and feed it into the design, then it will give me better output, and then it will give me good business benefit. Because of the organizations working in silos and data protections and other things, so probably that is one of the bottleneck right now. I think people are realizing it. They have to ultimately move to that particular phase. Second is, I think Murli and myself, when we started, we said 4M6C. At a business perspective, we'll drive this engagement, not IT perspective or technology perspective. We still maintain that. But I will add one more thing. We would like to now have this engagement from a decarbonization perspective. If I say organizations, I will reduce the carbon in your organization by 10%, 20%, whatever you have right now. I think if we drive the business case from that perspective, it will give a different outlook of digital twin. And that is what we would like to achieve down the line working in Atos.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. Right.
go with.
Thank you, Sandeep. Yeah, yes, absolutely great. Muli, so the decarbonized digital twin, will that be the one demystifying digital twin part 3?
That's what we
Okay.
anticipate. I think there is a lot of lot of audience were basically also interested in it. So we
Right.
just honor that. We love to do
That's
that.
perfect. Thank you so much, Muni. I think, well, that was a great session on demystifying digital twins part 2. We already heard digital twin part 3 will all be about decarbonization, but the achievements you can make, but also the value. If you have some certain question, just place them under this video afterwards. We're going to have a look and going to answer all of them. Also, if you want to hear anything special in demystifying digital twin part 3, 4, or 5, or the session which will take place in 24 months, please put that in your calendar. Feel free to do so. Otherwise, thank you for your time, for your participation. Have a great day, everyone. And yeah, be happy with your digital twin. Bye-bye.